a seat down, that last seat for me. A few things we have to do just as a formality. I need to make sure I identify myself. I'm Joseph Warpinski. I'm a special agent with NCIS. I'm the lead case agent for the case involving Chief Eddie Gallagher. Obviously, when we talked on the phone the other day, I said I need to talk to you about a few things from that case. You want to just give me kind of a real brief background of where you work now, where you've worked previously in the last couple of years, just so that I know, because I know you've got a few different ways you're involved in this, possibly.
Right. So okay, so for the last 4 years, so I was the Team 7 CMC back in from 2012 to 2014. Eddie Gallagher was one of the members in a platoon there. I finished up my CMC tour, no issues with Eddie during that time frame. Finished up my CMC tour, went up to Warcom, worked for the Force Master Chief up there at Warcom. Then I went on volunteered for a Siege of Soda deployment, which is an 06 level headquarters. Went to Iraq in 2016, June 2016 to December 2016. Came back and then transferred over to Group 1 around I think May time period of 2017. And then first week in August of 2017, me and the Commodore did change of command. I assumed the role as the CMC of Group 1 there. And then I've been in the seat since August 2017 until now.
Okay, so I knew that you were previously a CMC at Team 7.
Yes.
That was back, I mean, that's years ago then, so not during the most recent deployment where these allegations have come up.
Correct.
So during the time of deployment, you were, I mean, mostly a Group 1.
Yes, I've been on the West Coast for the entire 24, 25 years I've been in the teams.
Okay. When did you first start hearing any sort of rumors, allegations, anything involving Chief Gallagher during the deployment?
During the deployment, I didn't hear anything.
Okay.
In December, I don't know how much you want me to talk here, if you want to answer questions or...
No,
okay.
I'd prefer you can just kind of lay it out, and it makes it a whole lot easier.
Right, so the sequence of events the way I remember this is Al at some point in December went over and talked, December of 2017, went over and I think the platoon or the troop called him in. I think it was a platoon, called him in and they wanted to talk to him about Eddie Gallagher.
Okay.
And what came out of that discussion was, they were extremely pissed off at Eddie because he was like doing some type of petty theft type stuff. And during that event, it came up that Eddie was, he stole some shit from the guys. He was using the guys for bait, for like operations and stuff like that, whatever that means. Like they weren't being used properly. And then at one point, a detainee had come in and Eddie, I guess the guy was there and they had 2 medics from the platoon working on the guy.
Yep.
And Eddie came up and just, fucking stabbed the dude.
Okay.
Multiple times. And so that was the first I heard of it, was around late December 2017 time period.
Okay. You were not part of that meeting?
No, sir.
Okay, so Alzawi came and talked to you. Al came and talked to you.
Yes.
Okay. What was that conversation like with him? Was it, what do I do with this? Was it, how do we proceed? What was it?
Yes, it was all of those. It was kind of like a bombshell. Like I'm sitting there and he's like, "Hey man, I need to talk to you about something." And he's like, "Hey, I just met with the guys from the platoon troop and here's what came out of it." And I was flabbergasted. Like, okay, holy shit, this is a big deal. And so from there, I was like, all right, well, obviously Eddie had already, I think, transferred over to Tradet. And I think it was this all happened during the Christmas stand down period. So it was kind of like, hey, we'll have to pull Eddie off the podium. This is going to take some time to get through the right channels and, see what comes of it type thing. And so we pulled Eddie off the podium at Tradet. I think he was teaching South at that point. We're like, hey, Eddie, you're, obviously indiscreet, you're off. There's some serious things being said about you, and you're not a guy that we want up in front of the SEALs teaching them and prepping them for deployment.
Okay.
And then I would say in like January, February, now it's kind of like everything's bubbling to the surface. Things are the guys are pissed. They want something done. I think they thought at some point they talked to someone within the platoon. I don't know if it was the platoon OIC or troop commander that this had already, since it happened on deployment, it was already getting ran up the chain. But the guys were like, hey, what the fuck? The guy's the number one platoon chief out of Team 7. He's over at TRADET in a kind of like a coveted position teaching guys.
Yeah.
And the guy fucking murdered someone. What are you guys doing about it? So there was a lot of frustration. So he was pulled off the podium. We're trying to figure out over about a 4 to 6 week period, how the hell do you handle this thing?
Yeah.
And then so I think there was exchanges going back and forth with Al. He was kind of like since he was the troop SEA for the guys, he was like the go-between.
Okay.
And at some point, I would say between January and early February, it was kind of like, all right, I called the JAG with Al in the office. Hey, here's the shit that's being said. What the hell do we do with this? And at that point, the JAG's like, hey, unless people come forward and make a statement, put pen to paper, it's basically a rumor. And so that exchange happened a couple times, and I think the guys quickly realized that, hey man, you're gonna have to come forward and testify on this. If you want something done, you need to come forward, put pen to paper,
Yep.
to do something about this.
Any idea who that JAG was?
Yes, I believe I talked to Casey Parker on the phone.
Okay.
That's who I remember calling. Like each time I'd call the JAG. If you don't get one, I'd call the other. It's either Golden or Parker.
Okay. I know Parker's there now. Are you sure that it was Parker at the time?
I'm not 100% sure,
Okay.
but it had to have been Golden or Parker because
Yeah.
I got two numbers there to call the JAGs. I'm calling one of them, and I remember talking to LT Parker. I'm pretty sure it was Parker.
Okay.
You know, I just can't go, hey, I'm 100% sure it was Parker. But it was one of the JAGs like, hey, what the hell do we do with this? Here's the rumor out there.
Okay.
And it was kind of like, well, guys need to come forward and put pen to paper. And I think that's where, the guys had, they wanted to come forward and do the right thing, but they knew that this was going to be a big deal. So they're trying to do the right thing. It's just weird because you don't, like, who the hell would think, you're going to be bringing up charges on your platoon chief? And so they're putting in an unmanageable situation, And hell, for me, it's not an easy situation to deal with. And like, I've never had someone come to me and go like, hey man, the guys say he freaking murdered someone. That's a big deal. So.
Were you part of any of those conversations with the platoon members, or did you just speak with Alzali afterwards?
I never talked directly to any of the platoon members during this time frame when the allegations were getting flushed out. Al was kind of like the mediator in the whole thing.
Okay. Did you ever speak to Chief Gallagher at any point?
Yes.
Okay.
So Eddie came over for an office call in January or February time frame.
Okay.
And I think at this point, he's pulled off, we don't have him teaching Salk anymore, and he's kind of like coming over going and told me, hey, none of this stuff is true. This stuff that you're hearing about me isn't true.
Okay, so let's get into this meeting then. Okay. So he came over, was it just one-on-one, the two of you?
No, I was in the room on that.
Give me as many details as possible about what Chief Gallagher said.
So, what I remember is Eddie came over. He was frustrated because he'd been in for 18, 19 years at that point. He's like, he kind of felt like his name was getting dragged through the mud with the petty theft stuff and all that other shit. And so we didn't get directly to the point on him killing someone. That never really surfaced in the meeting from what I recall. It was more, hey, I didn't do these things the guys are saying I did. And I was just, to be honest with you, I really didn't want to. I was uncomfortable because he kind of just showed up over there, and I knew I had to talk to him. So the whole thing was uncomfortable, just because the whole situation's kind of like come to fruition over this time period. But what I remember is him just saying, "Hey, I didn't do these things that the guys are saying I did." The petty theft stuff seemed to bother him. The guys were bringing that up, and then whatever the misuse of tactics, like the guys being used as bait or whatever. And I'm not even sure what's accurate in that whole thing. That's just, I'm hearing stuff, second and third hand party on that.
So I think you said it, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
The actual incident with the killing the ISIS fighter, detainee, whatever, wasn't addressed
I did not address that with him. I wasn't like, well, hey Eddie, the guys are saying you freaking, shanked a dude.
Okay. Um, any other interactions with Eddie after that?
Um, at some point, yes, no, yes, I did. So he made senior chief. So later down the road, whenever the senior chief results came out in late April or early May, I think the allegations were they were already moving forward at that point. Now the stuff's in the system. He makes senior chief, and what we did is we temporarily suspend him being frocked,
Okay.
so that he doesn't, put on a star while all these allegations are going. So I had him come over and sign paperwork for like the administrative process on, hey, here's the deal, Eddie, you're gonna get your day in court, but as of right now, this stuff's coming up, and if your name gets cleared, you'll get promoted to senior chief. If it doesn't, then you're gonna obviously remain a chief, and there'll be bigger issues. And then he signed the paperwork, and I think he signed the paperwork there, but that was basically it. So I had two interactions with Eddie at that point.
Did he say anything during that second meeting about the allegations that he didn't believe them, that they weren't true? Did he say anything about the ISIS prisoner or anything at all?
No, no, sir.
Okay, so it was just kind of stabbing and then out the door, or
Stabbing.
signing and then out the door.
Yeah, yeah, signing. Yeah, no,
Freudian
nothing on
stuff.
that. Right, yeah. So he signed the paperwork, and then he knew from that point that he wasn't going to be frocked to senior chief, and we were going through this process.
Okay. Have you ever had text message conversations with him about any of this, about what's going on?
No, sir.
Phone calls with him in any way?
No.
Any personal text messages or anything with him about anything?
No, no, sir.
How about, so let's go back to when these allegations first started coming up. Who was this reported to when Alazawi brought this to you in December? Who else knew, as far as you know?
Me, as far as I was tracking, me and Alazawi knew at that point in December.
Okay.
And that I did not call the JAG in December on that.
Okay.
I was trying to work through how the hell we're going to handle this thing.
Okay.
So I didn't make any phone calls in December. The phone calls to the JAG didn't come until January, February timeframe.
Is it your understanding that the officers, the platoon and troop leadership knew in December, or did they learn later on?
What I'm tracking is that Alazawi found out in December.
Okay.
So the other leadership, I'm not tracking when the officer side of the house knew.
Okay.
But I know that what I'm tracking is Al found out in December, because he came over and talked to me about it. And that's where we were like, right, Eddie, you're off the podium, out of trade it.
Gotcha.
And now let's figure out how the hell this is going to get handled.
That decision to remove him from the podium, from Tradet in that training, that instructor position, was that something that you are able to make that decision on your own? Does that have to be in conjunction with anybody else, or is that just something you say that we're doing this and this gets done? Like, does that get run through any officers? Does that get run through anyone else in chain of command? Did you have to tell them why this was being done?
No, sir. So I basically made the decision there.
Okay.
Like, hey, we're pulling them off, and yeah. So I basically was like, hey, let's pull them off. No questions were asked.
Okay.
If any of the officers would have asked questions, then I would have been like, well, here's the deal.
Okay.
We're trying to figure this thing out, and he can't be on the podium while this is getting ready to come to the surface.
Okay. Then you say continues to build, bubbling up January and February timeframe. Was that continual conversation with Al that you had, or was it because of other meetings the platoon was having? What's your understanding of why it continued to progress at that point?
So I'm not exactly sure what's accurate, but I got the feeling that the platoon was meeting, like, I don't know if it was once a week or if guys were just calling because they were still frustrated and they were trying to figure out what they're going to do with this. And so I think there was a couple exchanges between Al and the platoon. And then, so it was just back and forth. Al would meet with the platoon, he'd come over and talk to me. And I'm like, okay, well, tell the guys, fucking call the IG hotline and file a complaint. Like, I think what the guys really wanted was Eddie to be pulled off the podium, not make senior chief, and not get a troop SEA position later on. I think that's what the guys wanted, without having to put this in, official channels and do. And so my position on it was, hey, I'm going to pull him off the podium for the time being until this gets solidified. We can't just have, the guys coming forward and saying something. Eddie's got to have his day in court with this shit.
Yeah.
So Eddie can get pulled off for now, and if you guys want to come forward to make a statement and put this in official channels, then the senior chief and the troop SCA stuff will come later on if he's convicted. If he's convicted, obviously he's not going to be doing any of that stuff. But if this is just swirling around out there and nothing's confirmed, then it's kind of like a he said, she said thing,
Okay. Was there? Do you know of any? Again, you're just talking with Al about this stuff. So he's relaying this back to the platoon. So you're not actually having these conversations with the platoon members themselves. Correct.
Yes, correct, sir. Yes.
I just want to make sure I'm 100% clear. What is your understanding? When is the first time you know that any officers were notified of this? Like that 100% officers know about the allegations?
Are you talking about Casey Parker or?
I guess. Well, did Casey, when you talked to the JAG, we'll talk about that again in a second.
Okay.
When you talked to JAG, how much did you specifically say about what was going on?
I was vague. I said, hey, here, when I talked to LT Parker, that's the only officer that I called on this, and I said, there's allegations of basically, I think I worded it something to the extent of, what do we do if we are hearing that someone possibly murdered someone? Well, like, what am I supposed to do? What am I legally supposed to do in this scenario? And she said that, well, the members have to come forward and make a statement, a written statement of some kind, and put pen to paper on it. Otherwise, it's rumors.
Okay.
And so that happened in January, February timeframe.
Okay. I think there's a little. I don't know whether it's you talk to someone else. My understanding is that Lieutenant Parker from early January until March was actually in Korea at the time.
Okay.
And so that's why I heard Al's always say the same thing that you were reporting, and so I'm trying to figure out. It doesn't seem realistic that it was Parker, because obviously she's your Group 1 JAG now.
Right.
Is there any possibility it was somebody else you talked to, or is it, you think the time frame off?
Yeah, I mean, my time frame could be off. Man, I just remember calling the JAG number and asking about this.
Who was your JAG there before Parker got there?
So, that would have, Hutchinson.
Okay.
But man, yeah, I don't know why I'm hung up on, Parker. Damn, she was in Korea from January to March. I mean, yeah, man, I'm willing to bet that and I wouldn't have called Korea for that. I would have just called the 537-3102 or 3101 number.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
did you ever I think she might have been gone by this time, but Kristen Seawalt, did you ever have any interactions with her?
She was, yeah, but she was already gone by then. Are you sure Parker didn't come back in like January, February?
My understanding is that she was IA she left in January, pretty early January, and then didn't come back till like 26 March. Maybe, you say January, February, it could be it was right before she left, so, those are the kind of things I'm trying to figure out.
Right, okay, damn man, I don't have a good answer for that.
That's fine, it's been months.
Right.
I'm not trying to force you to come up with something that you don't know to be true, but.
Man, I just distinctly, I don't know if my timeline's that far off, if that much time lapsed in there, but damn, I remember calling the JAG like twice on this, because I'm like, what the hell do we tell the guys to do on this,
Okay.
Type thing. But it wasn't, the sequence, maybe we're off on weeks on the sequence, but that was kind of like the sequence of events. Al had a platoon meeting with the guys. Al told me Eddie's pulled off the podium. At some point within a 3 to 6 week period, it's it's back, and we're like, okay, what the hell do we do with this? What do the guys have to do to get this in the right channels? Um, so yeah, yeah, I don't know.
Um, do you remember when the op rep or sit rep came up when this was finally reported to NCIS? Would you have seen that or known
Yeah,
about that?
well, yes, yeah, absolutely, because it was. I remember the. I think I remember the set rep going out. It was like a Friday, and it was late. It was, obviously it was a big to do because it went out to SOCOM and went out to Big Navy
Yeah.
on this thing. When the guys officially made the statement, yeah. So I don't. I thought in March is when they came forward and made the official statement on this stuff.
So that came out on, it was the very first week of April. It was a
Okay.
Friday. You're 100% right, late in the
Right.
afternoon on a
Right.
Friday. The only reason I bring that up is any guess between the time when these
Yeah.
conversations happened with notifying the JAG and when that came out. I mean,
Right.
how much time are we talking there? We're talking weeks, months?
I think it was just weeks.
Okay.
So maybe, yeah, maybe my timeline's just way early. That's a possibility.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, again, it's been months, so.
Yeah.
Um, do you remember reporting this to any of the other officers other than the JAGs over at,
No.
at Group 1?
No, I did not.
Did you have conversations with any other, like the senior enlisted individuals about this prior to NCIS being notified?
Like, what do you mean by
I
that?
mean, anybody else, any other CMCs, or actually even like any of the warrant officers or anybody come forward and talk to you about what's going on with Gallagher?
No, I mean, I know there was stir on it, but I definitely didn't. It was like me and Al talking on this thing. And then Eddie getting pulled off the podium, and people, people didn't want to know. They're like, hey, why? It was just kind of like, hey, keep it quiet. There's allegations coming up against Eddie that is going to take time to work through.
So let's talk about Eddie for a little bit. How long have you known him?
Just 2012 was the first interaction I had with him when I was a CMC at SEAL Team 7.
Okay. What has your interaction been like with him? What did you think about him prior to any of these allegations coming up?
I didn't. You got quite a few guys at the team. He did his job. He did a good job. He had a good reputation at the, in 2012 to 2014. Like, he was a medic. Guys liked working with him. Type thing. He was a reliable SEAL, and so you knew you could count on him. He was kind of like a fire and forget within the platoon.
Yeah.
So we never had any issues with him when I was doing my CMC position at Team 7.
Was he a standout, or was he just one of those guys who was a solid guy, and so it's just you could count on him? I mean, obviously he's not standing out for negative reasons. He's standing out for very positive reasons or anything.
I don't remember anything negative. I don't remember anything like positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
After that, I mean, how's it progressed? Or did you, after you left Team 7, you stop having interactions with him until?
Well, even when I was doing my CMC position, I didn't have, you don't really have that much direct interaction with the guys. Like, you'll go in and talk to the platoon or troop or that kind of thing. But I never, even then, I wasn't like, hey, Eddie, how's it going? I just knew him as Gallagher.
Okay.
And then, yeah, when I finished up my CMC and went to Warcom, man, I was off the grid. You're so busy up there doing staff stuff that you don't have time.
Fair to say you've never really had any sort of personal interactions with him? I mean, you ever see him out go out drinking at different events, at parties, people's retirement, promotion ceremonies, anything like that?
I'm not a party guy.
Okay.
And I'm old. So, yeah, no, I've never seen him. I've never seen him or his family out in town, ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that comes to mind as far as this investigation goes, sticks out? I mean, you said you're not really surprised that we're calling. Anything else that you think is worth reporting? Anything else that's reported to you?
No, I mean, yeah, no. I mean, December time frame is when I got the word from Al, and then we started kind of working through this, or I started working through this thing.
Okay. Sounds good. I mean, easy enough. I appreciate you coming over this morning.
Yeah.
I think think you've got my phone number, so if you think of anything else, just feel free to give me a call.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate your time, sir.
Yeah,